Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. The book, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, was followed by Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, which was followed by Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children, where Brian Vukadinovich did write the foreword to that, and I thank him for that. And that book was followed by Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, Child Trafficking Through the Foster Care and Court Systems. That book came out mid-July 19th, and it became a bestseller right out the gate. So also feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going, and that is in the podcast notes. I've got a brand new guest on. I have Jeff Fenton along here, accompanied by Brian Vukadinovich. We're going to talk about fraud on the court by officers of the court and how a divorce was an opportunistic a device for predatory litigation. We're going to start off with a video, okay?
A big part of this lawsuit is the fact that my home was stolen under color of law by a conspiracy between bad actors working in both the Williamson County Chancery Court and the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Middle District of Tennessee, where I wasn't even provided notice that a single mortgage payment of ours had been missed, let alone the fact that my ex-wife and her counsel had secretly defaulted upon our mortgage payments and filed for bankruptcy around the same time when we both knew a year in advance that her employer planned to retire and close their architectural firm at the end of their office lease when she needed to transition into working for another firm. To make matters even worse, my wife's counsel coordinated their attacks while using the same fraudulent narrative in both courts, claiming that my wife was the actual owner of our Brentwood marital residence, when in fact we both invested the whole of our premarital retirement savings in the purchase of our home, while it was equally deeded to us both as tenancy by the entirety. To still make matters even worse, my wife's counsel motioned for the bankruptcy court to sell our marital residence, which I was lawfully in possession of at that time, without even providing me notice or an adversarial proceeding as was required by the federal rules of bankruptcy procedure and subsequent bankruptcy laws, denying me both lawful notice and any opportunity to save my property, or at the very least to mitigate my losses in my property interest prior to the forced deprivation of my property as is required in both the 5th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution, along with the state of Tennessee's own Constitution, to ensure that I had absolutely no chance to save my property interest and thwart the forced auction of my home with no minimums. The Chancery Court unlawfully restrained me by ordering that I not directly or indirectly interfere in the sale by any means. Everything done by the prestigious officers in both courts was a felony crime against myself and my family, while they even leveraged the Williamson County Sheriff's Office as the muscle by which to wrongfully evict me from my home, ordered by a court without lawful jurisdiction, based upon fraudulent claims which clearly constituted felony obstruction of justice by both Attorney Virginia Lee Story in Chancery Court and Judge Michael W. Binkley, who signed the wrongful orders. Unbeknownst to me at that time, Judge Michael W. Binkley has a sordid past of criminal misconduct and involvement with members of organized crime, while Attorney Story was an undisclosed close family friend, partying, and vacationing buddy of Judge Michael W. Binkley. I never had a chance at justice. I was only there for a divorce, but they took my whole life away.
I thank you for that video because that explains this real estate deed fraud that took place in Williamson County, Brentwood, Tennessee. And you've got a RICO case going. So where are you at with that?
I'm just starting. I've been at this since October of last year, and it is still just starting. So it has, it's hard. I mean, because you're trying to sue, I'm trying to sue 5 judges, 10 attorneys, 5 law firms, 2 brokerages, real estate brokerages, 2 auctioneers, 5 municipal sections of government, and 3 courts against me, the pro se litigant, who has all the evidence on their side, but nobody to date cares at all about evidence.
No,
It's
they
like
don't.
they don't. If one person cared about the fact that, if one person cared about their oath of office, honesty, doing the right thing, in the last, over 4 years now, all I need is one honest judge. People see the evidence. They're like, this is easy. You can get this taken care of. All you need is one honest judge. Where do you find one honest judge? And it's not that they don't exist, but they have to be in authority in the direct and somewhere in the line to where I can encounter them. And so when it first got filed in this court here currently, I filed this lawsuit in Michigan. My hope was, I live in Michigan now. My hope was that these people are known bad actors in the state of Tennessee. These people, if you knew their history, you would never have expected much different than what I experienced. It's just I didn't know their history. And when I went into court, I thought court was really court. I thought people were honest. I thought that my taxes paid that judge $200,000 a year. So whether or not I'm his buddy or not, he is going to make a ruling relative to justice. I knew that I knew it wasn't going to be I knew that my ex-wife would beat me or whatever, because the family had money and this and that. I understood you better counsel, more money, you're going to get more favor. What I never understood was that my constitutional rights and basic human rights would not even be taken into consideration by the court at all. I mean, at all. And so that was what really spun my head around, was the fact that, I walked out of there and called the FBI and said, what happened to my constitutional rights? Nothing that happened made any sense at all. And it's taken years of self-education. That was how I first met Brian, but through his books, trying to learn about what in God's name just happened. And what I thought that my search would reveal in the beginning was that I ran into a hillbilly mob of, Dixie Mafia, down south, people that just decided, that you weren't going to get through their little clan no matter what happened, and they were corrupt and didn't care about the law. That was what I thought I might discover eventually. And it's not that I didn't discover that any of that wasn't true, but I discovered that it is a nationwide and even global crisis from sea to shining sea. And that is the part that becomes even more overwhelming and discouraging, because it's like, if it's not just an isolated problem, how do I get anybody to care about this? And then when you just mention a divorce related to it, then it's just everybody sees divorces are ugly, bad things happen, people lose their homes, they lose stuff all the time. And but the reality is none of this had anything to do with the divorce. The divorce never got heard. The divorce was just how the attorneys interjected themselves in the situation and took over our lives, both of our property and legally. So, yeah.
When they took over your lives, how did they weasel their way in?
Well, they weaseled their way into mine with, so she had 2 teams of counsel that were working in the United States Bankruptcy Court and in the Williamson County Chancery Court simultaneously. They had the bankruptcy court they filed a bankruptcy just on her behalf when we both were equally deeded on the home and we both equally invested. I never filed bankruptcy. They did it just on her behalf, and she didn't need to file bankruptcy. And all this stuff is a ruse. So they did that to try to force the sale of the house and to get me out of the house, because they didn't have any legal reason and I was doing nothing wrong. I had done nothing wrong. And so they did this by her defaulting on the mortgage payments in advance. Nobody ever provided me notice. Then filing bankruptcy secretly. And again, I was supposed to be notified by the bankruptcy court. I was on the deed. They had to have me there. They never notified me. They never had me there. And then 39 days later, her divorce attorney filed divorce and then filed an order of protection against me immediately, blocking me from being able to communicate with the bankruptcy court, the mortgage companies, blocking me from being able to try to save my home in any way, shape, or form when I never even knew it was even a threat in any way, shape, or form, and put an order of protection against me with a completely fraudulent narrative of me being a big ugly monster. So, and like I had beat my wife or something, and we never had any physical conflicts of any sort. And I've never been arrested in my life. I had not even gotten a traffic ticket in 25 years in Tennessee. We had no domestic disputes. And my wife is a licensed Tennessee handgun instructor with $10,000 worth of assault weapons and training in the Nevada desert. And every time I took her to a gun range, the gun master looked at me and he said, "You better be nice to her," because she could outshoot me any day, 10-1. So it's like, they take whatever narrative they think they can use to put fear in there. And if they can make me a psycho and there's guns involved, we owned guns. There was no guns involved. We had no incidences of any sort. And they will totally they will manipulate anything that they think that they can use a narrative that they can gain power over you. And it's just obscene is the word I use over and over. It's just obscene. It's just obscene.
Yes, Brian Vukadinovich and we're totally aware of all these false narratives that these attorneys come up with. I mean, I went through it, and a lot of people went through it. And everything that you're even saying on this podcast is basically a lot of the things other people are saying, but people don't get it until it happens to them.
That's the sad part. And that's what I don't know. That's one of the things that's discouraging about this is how do you wake people up before they're in that point, and once you're in that point, when somebody puts an order of protection on you and you want to stand up and say this is wrong, everybody's going to hear it from the position of maybe that's on you for a reason. And now you're upset too. So you're showing that much more how you're not in control. And so people, so one of the things a group on Twitter, and Brian and I started talking about a long time ago, was how orders of protection are used both to defame people for, quote unquote, predatory litigation. What they do is oftentimes, whether it's eldership, guardianship, conservatory cases, whether it's CPS cases, whether it's spousal cases, they use fraudulent claims. They monstrify one party and they put an order of protection on them that both binds them, gags them, and essentially steals the voice of the litigant. So before day one of my first hearing, I'm going into court, and now I am the monster presumed without any evidence, even though I've got all kinds of evidence it's not true. Court doesn't care. So it's, again, it not only binds you, it makes it to where you literally lose your voice in advocating with the court also, because everything once an order of protection is against you, it is very difficult to try to get back to ground zero. You are way below ground zero just starting off with the order of protection. And when they do it the way they did it with me, it's predatory in the first place because everything's presumed what the attorney said is true when in fact actually hardly any of it was true at all, and they said that I walked around claiming that that mumbling or chanting that I was a member of the extraction team, which sounds like some backwoods skinhead nutty kind of thing. And it's like, I have no such affiliations in any way, shape, or form, so and I've tried to, I've tried to counter that. I've tried to show people different family videos and stuff I had where I fed raccoons on my back porch every night. I had like 20 raccoons come up and eat out of my hand every night. And we were backed up to hundreds of acres of protected woodlands. You know, we had a really nice property and a really nice place. And it's like, I'm not the monster they want to pretend I am.
I know,
You know,
right.
but it's really hard to convince people of that when you're that person. It's a lot easier if I'm saying you're not the monster they're making you out to be. But if I'm speaking for myself, it's almost impossible, especially, you know, when it's someone that's bigger than the other party or this or that, and where it's easy to. I know a lot of people that have I know people that have graduated from West Point that have, you know, I know people that have done tremendous service for our country, and the courts will take that and not only dishonor them in that, they will use that as a reason to be that much more restrictive with them because, well, you look like you could literally kill somebody with your hands. So we're gonna, you know, be that much more restrictive to you. And it's like the opposite of the way you think it should be. Somebody, you know, I didn't graduate from West Point, but a friend of mine did. And it's like, and he went through the same thing, same court, you know, I mean, it was different circumstances, but he's had his life totally destroyed starting, you know, I think it was 2 years before mine was. And it's just, so it's unbelievable. I didn't even know until the end that he was a colonel. He was a colonel. He graduated from West Point. You know, he went to school with some of the people running our government right now, and still, you know, they completely destroyed his life, all based off of BS.
Off of lies. And like I said, this can happen to anyone. And I would like to know, how do these attorneys get away with walking into the courtroom, speaking first, and calling out these false accusations, silver bullets, and the judge runs with it without looking at any evidence of
right
the litigant?
And again, for me, I was like, I mean, I when they started with this order of protection stuff, I mean, I knew that orders of protection are called like the nuclear bomb in divorces. Okay. It's kind of widely known that if women use an order of protection, they can gain more leverage in it. And there's even been people out of this court, administrators out of this court, I've seen on Facebook where they caught him on film saying that just because it would help give them more, you know, more leverage. But typically that's thought of for, you know, and I'm not being sexist, okay, but I'm just using the examples that are here for me. But I know women that have been hurt as bad or worse than I have from the same court. So I thought it was all about sex at that time. I got woke up when I told a woman that I knew that who was destroyed worse than me. And she thought it was actually the opposite. But so, you know, they will use any narrative where they can get control over you. And I mean, to the extents that are bad. I mean, bad. I mean, I know people that are literally have had false narratives and put them in prison for a decade because of some of these same people that just wanted to disempower them so they could do whatever they wanted with their life. And so, right. So I got a little off track, but what I was my brain hops a little bit. Sometimes you gotta yank me back. But what I was thinking, well, I guess can't tell what I was thinking, but what I was thinking is usually you think about orders of protection as something that a woman in a divorce, a party in a divorce, is going to manipulate against the other person. In this case, the order of protection was not used for that. The order of protection was to give the judge an opportunity to exceed his lawful jurisdiction and power to control me more and to impose on me more under the guise of protecting this other person. But he went far and away beyond anything that could ever benefit her in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, for example, after I left, they put a 1-year order of protection on me. And after I left, and when I reported their misconduct to the Court of Appeals and the Tennessee Supreme Court, they added 5 more years without a hearing, without notice, without anything. And still to this day, nobody's even told me what I did wrong for that extra 5 years. And
and that was Judge Michael W. Binkley?
Michael W. Binkley, who has thankfully been removed from the throne, but has admitted no wrong. So it's like, and that's what they do with these corrupt judges. They swoop them off stage left. They don't want to admit anything that they did wrong. And they just want to try to contain the liability, but they don't help you. And so, yeah.
Could I just chime in on that, what Jeff just said?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, before I do, I have to say the book Raised by These Wolves by Maryann Petri here is a must read. There's 27 stories in here about people who have encountered difficulties in the courts, just as Jeff is currently doing at the moment. It's a great, and you mentioned earlier about how important it is for people. We said that people don't realize what's going on in the courts until something happens to them. Right. And yet all these people around the country are actually financing the courts through their tax dollars. They're paying for these corrupt judges and these corrupt courts to operate. So people, even though they don't have any personal involvements in courts, they need to start looking into some of the cases that are going on, such as Lee Grenade and Adrian Miranda, that I know you've written about both of them in your book, Maryann. And it's a horror story. And what's going on with Jeff, and Jeff's talking about the protection order, the corrupt protection order in his case. And I know there's a wonderful mother in California, Natalie. And Jeff, I think you've been in touch with Natalie, how they put a protection order against her. She's a wonderful mother who has exercised her First Amendment rights. She came to school board meetings, criticized the school board in California, in Southern California there, about things that were going on that were unjust. And then the school corporation hired a lawyer. And then, just as lawyers operate, then they put a protection order against her, and she couldn't even. Such a distance they put that she couldn't even. They didn't allow her to even come and pick up her son at school. They had some order about how far she could stay away from the school. This is what's happening in the court system. The abuses that are going on, and as Jeff pointed out here, and with lawyers. Jeff was talking about how, the lawyers come in and say whatever they want. Isn't it interesting that in any court procedure, whether it's a hearing or a trial or whatever, the witnesses have to take an oath. In jury trials, the jurors have to take an oath. Everybody has to take an oath who participates in the trial, except lawyers. They don't have to take an oath. They should be the first ones required to take an oath. And then one thing that's very upsetting is in many court cases, the decisions that I've read, appellate laws, there are appeals filed, and then they will actually show in the appeal that the judge lied to the jury in the opening statement or in a closing argument. And the appellate courts consistently and routinely rule that the lawyer's statements are not evidence. In other words, lawyers have a license to lie. And that is one of the major problems we have. And courts are supposed to be about truth and honesty.
Right.
And when you set free lawyers to walk into a courtroom knowing that they can lie without any recourse, any accountability, therein lies the problem. So Jeff's going through it. Natalie's going through it in California. Lee's going through it in Georgia, or she went through it in a case in Georgia involving a divorce situation. Adrian Miranda's going through it with a corrupt prosecutor in Baltimore County in Maryland, prosecutor / lawyer, lawyers. And this is a problem we have around the country. The people just don't have a chance, basically, and it's sad.
I thought when this first happened with me that I had this lawyer on perjury because I had a number of things for a fact she lied about on court record that I knew she knew the truth about, ones that like even I told her the day before, she still went into court the next day and told the same outrageous lie anyways. And I thought, I've got her on perjury. And it wasn't till later I realized that, oh, she's not under oath, but what are we doing here then? You know, what, I mean, we're making decisions my whole life has changed by, but she doesn't have to tell the truth. I mean, that's just, and the judge took everything she said, and she wrote the court order against the pro se party, and her buddy judge signed it. You know, it's just, I think about your case with what I'm going through right now, Brian, with because now I'm in Michigan and I filed this lawsuit, and so the first judge that was assigned the case immediately recused herself. And I have to think that that's because she knows it's going to be an ugly poo storm with all these different judges and everything that I'm suing. It's not anything that any judge really wants to have their name associated with. And so once she's out of the way, and a friend of mine says that means she was the honest judge. That's the one you really wanted to have. She's the one that's not, that would have gave an honest thing, but she's doesn't want to be involved with it because all these other corrupt people are going to want to twist the narrative. So they assigned a magistrate judge, and right away he went to trying to proactively attack me to throw this out of court when I haven't even served the parties yet. So it's like I have spent months fighting him just to not defeat my lawsuit before it's served. And it makes me think back with Judge Posner, with you, how they had, what was that? Professional courtesy? Is that what there you go, you know?
Yeah, it's horrendous. What's going on? I have a particular magistrate. In my case, his name's John E. Martin, and what a disaster. Just to take a minute here to show actually what this is. This is in a federal court. I'm suing a very prominent, very well-known, famous federal court of appeals judge, Richard Posner, for breach of contract. He hired me to work for him, and then when it came time to pay up for my work, then we run into all these shenanigans. So I had to sue him. I gave him a chance to pay what he owed me without a lawsuit. Chose not to, and now here we are. And this lawyer in the case, his name is Justin Ellis. He filed an affidavit. Mary, we talked about this earlier on a show we did, and he filed an affidavit stating that he was involved. They're trying all kinds of different angles in this case, and he filed an affidavit stating that on a statute of limitations argument that they're trying to bring that really has no merit. But again, you know, lawyers do what they do and they get away with a lot of these things. And that's currently what's going on now. And this Ellis filed this affidavit stating, and it was done under oath, under penalty of perjury, and he falsely stated in trying to argue a statute of limitations issue, he said that the last email that I sent Posner was in July of 2019, and therefore so much time had went by between that email and when I requested my payment for my services that there's a statute of limitations issue in play now, which was a lie. And then I produced in court an affidavit that was an email that I sent to Posner in November of 2020, which is way after July 19th, asking for payment for my services, which put me in the statute of limitations. And then I asked the court for sanctions for the perjury, which is actually not only sanctionable in a court proceeding by fine and so forth, but it's actually a federal crime to do that, to file a perjured affidavit in court. But surprise, surprise, the judge let that go and would rather entertain other issues that these corrupt lawyers in 3 different states are proceeding on, and I'm addressing those issues right now. And they, you know, how corrupt it is. To make a long story short, well, Posner gets to do discovery against me but I'm prevented from doing discovery against him, even though it's my obligation to prove the case. It's called bifurcated discovery, which two different judges in the Northern District of Indiana have denounced in four different cases, and I cited those cases. But yet this magistrate, this Johnny Martin, he doesn't want to adopt those rulings in this district for some reason. I wonder what that reason is.
Mm.
Well, you're going against a well-known federal judge. Forget the rules, forget fairness, forget what's just and what's fair. So we got to do everything we can do to protect this judge. And let me tell you something else that's really concerning here. This lawyer, Ellis, he filed hundreds and hundreds of screenshots of my interviews with Maryann, and actually listed Maryann as a witness in the case.
He should buy her a cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah. Hey, the whole law firm, the whole law firm.
But that's, what's going on in the country. It's sad. And Jeff's right. And Maryann, you're right. People need to look in on what's going on within the court system. And we can't be letting these lawyers have a pass to lie. Mm-hmm. And we can't let these judges proceed corruptly without any accountability. And this is why we need a system in this country where when complaints are filed against judges, whether it's state court or federal court, that the people in this country, the citizens of this country, that they be on these committees that review these complaints, because it's just a judge. In many cases, it's a friend of the judge that you're complaining about. They're making these determinations, and they almost 100% of the time are dismissed. And that's why.
And they've done it a dozen times before, and you never knew, and the media never caught wind. It all needs to be public, because I've had in Tennessee, they'll tell me, well, we can't take accusation. This is their career. This is their profession. We can't just make accusations and unless everything's proven. And again, with these complaints, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but with these complaints, a lot of times what they do is they let them stack up. And then when they scoot the judge out the back door, they close all the complaints because it's no longer relevant. They say that the only way they can take action against the judge is to take him off the bench. And if he's off the bench, it's already the harshest penalty they can levy. And they leave them with a bar license so they can pull them out of the wings later when they have some other situation where people are complaining about a corrupt judge and try to recuse them, and they'll bring the ringer in from the back line that should have been off, should never be on the bench again, but was never disbarred, and have them throw the case for them. And it's just, so what I was thinking about also with when I said that was how, so here I am in Michigan, and I think, okay, so I got out of the cesspool of Middle Tennessee. I know all these people are buddies now. I didn't know that before, but after a few years of doing research, you find all these people in all these atrocious newspaper articles, and you're like, what in the hell were they thinking when they put me in a court with all these people with conflicts of interest? I didn't have a prayer at an impartial tribunal. Anybody that thought I did is an idiot. So yes, I didn't have a clue, but the Supreme Court does, so why did they do that? And so I'm out of the cesspool of Middle Tennessee. I'm in Michigan, and I'm thinking, okay, mate, this is the dumb thing. Every single court I've gone to, from the original trial court to the Court of Appeals to everything, every single court I go to, I think, whew, I made it out of that cesspool alive, that corrupt court. Now maybe I can get some justice. And I go to the next court, I do the same thing. Or they just ignore everything the last court did and throw out my case for some technical reason and don't care about what justice is. And so now I'm in Michigan, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm finally going to get justice. And they just attack me from head to toe. And it's like, if you read any of I have filed 4,350 pages in my lawsuit so far because they keep fighting me, wanting to throw it out on technicalities. And I am determined to prove the evidence of all the crimes these bozos have committed, because the evidence of their crimes should outweigh any technical reason they want to throw my case out of court. If they're going to let these people literally commit a dozen criminal felonies against people, And this is the other problem I have with the statute of limitations, and I don't doubt you have the same thing, but if you have this many people in positions of public trust that the taxpayers are paying, that are all working together to commit crimes against the people, I'm sorry, those statute of limitations saying you got 1 year to catch them and figure everything out, or 2 years or 4 years or whatever it might be, different states are different. That's got to have some compounding factor where you get extra time, or it needs to go out the window. People should not be penalized and lose everything they have in their life and have absolutely no remedy available to them because they trust their government and they do what they're told they have to do, so that is, completely wrong. But I think back to your case where, okay, I'm in a safe court now, I'm a distance away from them, and then Posner gets the call and somebody asks for him to reciprocate or to professional courtesy by throwing the case against you. So, and then, so this can happen anywhere, and the other thing that's really upsetting is when you file cases like I filed and you call people out for corruption or for committing crimes, it's almost guaranteed they're going to just tank your case. And that's not based on any evidence. If you look at evidence, our country right now is struggling with a corruption epidemic in every branch of government to the level that it is probably the greatest national security threat, and certainly the greatest civil unrest threat in our country is corruption. So if you're not allowing people to bring legitimate claims of corruption and try to get the people out of the courts legally, or try to get people out of government legally that are hurting and preying upon the people, then what are you doing? What are you about? It's just, I'm not one of these people that wants to see some kind of a civil war. I honestly think I don't think it's physically possible anymore without destroying everything, because it's not North against South anymore. Everybody's interwoven so much. It's neighbor against neighbor, Democrat against Republican, and both parties are wrong. So it's like, I believe the only hope we have is to change the system from within. But if they're not letting us do it, then they're condemning us to destroy it, or us all to destroy ourselves. And that's not logical. It's not lawful. It's against everything they believe in. So I have
not to interrupt, but you have a magistrate, and so does Brian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all three of us had magistrates. So I know Brian knows this because I had talked to him earlier, but my magistrate had a telephonic phone conference with the lawyers of the corporation, and even the other attorney that was in there involved as well. And the judge, the magistrate, because I think magistrates are a lower form of judgery, in my opinion, but he admitted to not even looking at any of my exhibits/evidence. So I, the next day, filed a motion for him to read all the exhibits. How bad is that?
Did he do it?
The next day, after he got that motion, he answered it. He wanted to dismiss the case, so I took it to appeals, and it rotted there for about 3 to 4 months, and then they dismissed it. So I don't think...
When this first happened to me and they first attacked me in the very beginning, I knew when I filed my complaint that I did it in a hurry. I was right before the court closed that day. I took them a couple thousand pages because I wanted to take the court records from the two preceding things, because they had a bankruptcy in one court, which was my ex-wife's, didn't even involve me, but they took my home. And then they had the divorce in the other court, which again, we never even started the divorce proceeding. They just took my home and put the order of protection on me. So without putting those two court records together in one place, you couldn't see all the shenanigans between the two courts. So I filed both of those in the very beginning. Then they jumped my case about filing all these pages. And so when I took all these into the court at first, I had a big tub. I was trying to hurry up and get there before the court closed. And I was in such a rush. When I got back home, I realized about 5 pages got ripped off and were laying in the bottom of my tub. So I knew they were missing pages even on my complaint. So I knew it was going to be jacked up. But the problem is you're only guaranteed one amended complaint. So after that, you can ask. I know anything I can't count on anything I'm not guaranteed. So I'm going to try to get it right for the one amended complaint. So in the meantime, I've known it's been a little bit jacked up. So I cut them a lot of slack the first time they jumped me, because there was, he might not have clearly found where everybody was so wrong and done so many crimes. But then when I sat there and I devoted, 4 or 6 months to filing declarations with evidence proving, another 2,000 pages proving over and over and over all the misconduct, all the crimes between these people, and he still came back and wanted to jump me on technical grounds, that was a big letdown, because it's like, that justice is just, where his heart is. His heart is covering up the appearance of impropriety over getting rid of impropriety. And that is one of the big things the courts are really heinous about in this day.
Well, I can tell you how bad it is. You're talking about evidence, and particularly with a magistrate. I can tell you how bad it is. When I was dealing with the issue of the bifurcated discovery, as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 cases in this division against bifurcated discovery by 2 different judges. And then when we talked about this issue with this magistrate Martin, and he doesn't want to follow those 4 decisions. So then I asked him to explain that. Why are you not willing to follow the 4 decisions from this division from 2 different judges? And instead of actually explaining his reason for it, his response to me was, I made my ruling.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that he won't explain his own reason for it is very clear. We do not want you to have evidence that you're entitled to in your claims against this Judge Posner, and therefore we will go ahead and proceed in a corrupt manner without explanation, without following the decisions from this division. That's how it works. But you know what? I'm not at all surprised. Not long ago, this one particular lawyer, Justin Ellis, out of New York, he wrote, can you believe he wrote a letter to this magistrate, Judge Martin, and he said to the magistrate, he asked the magistrate Martin for, quote, now I'm quoting him now out of the letter, for help and assistance in discovery. And he actually said that in a letter to this magistrate. Please give us help and assistance in discovery. And this magistrate is doing exactly that. And it's a letter. I have the letter. So no doubt he's going to want to try to do everything he can to help Posner, get the case dismissed and so forth. I'll have to take it to the Court of Appeals probably eventually, and I'll address it. And
I wonder if he's getting help and assistance in his bank account in return.
Well, that's you know what, Jeff? That's something that the public should actually be concerned about, because I have very great concerns about that with bribes and payoffs under the table in cases. These things that are done in
When
secret.
I contacted the FBI, one of the things they wanted to know, I could point out all kinds of crimes they committed. They wanted to know, they wanted to see the direct cash trail back to the judge. And if I couldn't make that connection, they didn't care about the rest of the crime. So it's like what I've seen the last, and this is a group of people now where this guy's predecessor, so my judge was captured on a prostitution charge years back, had it dismissed and expunged by a known corrupt judge, Casey Moreland. So Michael Binkley got caught in a prostitution sting in 2010. Judge Casey Moreland out in Nashville dismissed and expunged it in a highly unusual way. And later, Casey Moreland got arrested by the FBI and actually went to prison for corruption. So it's not like all these are far-fetched accusations. I'm just hurting these good, reputable people's, and I am like, this is absurd. This is organized crime. You are and again, this is tax-funded organized crime. And what you were saying just a little while ago, Brian, really caught me, because one of the things I discovered when I went through this whole process was not only are we paying for the judges out of our taxes, in Williamson County, Tennessee, we pay $1 million a year to a private attorney to defend the criminal actions by our county against us. So if we want to say, like, for example, to the police chief, why are your officers breaking the law on my property? He won't answer it. He will have either give you the card for, okay, so for example, I tried to contact, because they sent police officers to my house to illegally evict me. I asked, after I'm in Michigan, can I get a copy of that police report that involves me at my house? Well, you're not in Tennessee anymore. You don't have a Tennessee driver's license. We can't give it to you. Okay, that's not crazy. That's crazy. It was at my house and it was involving me. And they give me the card for the county attorney. It's the stone wall. You're not getting any more information. And the county attorney I've argued with before, and her answer is, at the bottom line, I'm not telling you anything. And the only way you're going to get past me is to sue me and to sue the county in their friendly court where they're going to decide it. And in the meantime, we are paying the officials that are breaking the laws against us. We are paying $1 million a year for an attorney who's going to defend them and tell us to bugger off and not even answer to the public. And on top of all that, when they get sued and someday have to pay damages, all the people pay that too out of their taxes. The only people that didn't have to pay are the crooks, and it's like, and that's one of the things I don't understand with the state protecting these bozos, because in the end, the state is hurt. The state is helped by things being done honestly. The state has less liability when things are done honestly. The state does not benefit by letting these criminals persist, but they do it, and they keep doing it, and they keep doing it. And so the people are hurt. When the people's interests and the state's interests are in alignment, which is actually getting rid of corruption, rooting corruption out, then the people and the state itself prospers. The only people that don't prosper is the crooks in the middle. So why do we give a shit about that? Why aren't we getting rid of the crooks in the middle?
Well, I can answer that question. The problem is this, Jeff, you spoke about it very eloquently here. The problem is this. When you sue government officials, corrupt government officials, including judges, and government officials, mayors, police chiefs, any form of government official, they have this ridiculous doctrine called qualified immunity that they all enjoy. You can show all the evidence of the things that they did against you, and the first thing these lawyers do that they hire, as you said, a lot of times even they hire private lawyers, even though you're already paying for lawyers, they're already on the payroll in your government division, and then they bring in outside lawyers and immediately qualified immunity. You cannot go after these public officials because they're immune. And guess what? That's not, a lot of people, as soon as they hear qualified immunity, most people think that's a law. That is not even a law. Qualified immunity is a doctrine. It was something that was conjured up by the Supreme Court of the United States, who aren't even supposed to be making laws. Their job is to enforce the laws.
Right.
And they conjured up this thing called qualified immunity that screws over every citizen in this country when you're supposed to have a right to redress of your grievances, but when it happens to be a government official, well, let's protect the government officials and let's do everything we can to make it nearly impossible for people to obtain justice against wrongs that were committed against them. And we can thank the Supreme Court of the United States for that, for conjuring up this doctrine. It's not even a law. And, where's Congress with all of this? See, Congress can step in and really do a lot of things, to eliminate a lot of these nonsense things that are happening in the court system. And, where the Senate Judiciary Committee could be conducting investigations, try contacting some of those people sometime and see where you go, whether it's the Senate, federal, or even state courts. Where do you go? The elected officials who actually have the power to do something about these things, they run and hide. And where's the media also on a lot of these things? I can tell you this, I just wrote an op-ed just, I think within the last couple of weeks. I wrote an op-ed. It was published by the Kansas City Star, major newspaper, and then also in the Miami Herald, and I believe in 10 other states, newspapers picked it up. And it was on the issue of these judges who want to get on the Supreme Court, and they appear in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and we've all seen the when they interview them on TV and so forth, and they're all under oath, and they lie like hell to get on there. Oh, we follow every single one of them, every one of them. Oh, we follow precedent. It's called, in legal terms, fancy legal terms, if you ever hear the words stare decisis, that's fancy terminology for a precedent. Oh, we follow precedent. We always do. It's very important. And then when they get on the Supreme Court, they do quite the opposite. And the Supreme Court now is there's been a lot of controversy and just in some recent rulings. For example, there was one case just recently here, Snyder versus the United States in Portage, Indiana. The mayor took kickbacks for a contract, and then later was given money by this corporation that he allowed, he gave the contracts to, and then he was paid off for it. And the U.S. Supreme Court said, well, that was okay. We consider that to be a tip. They actually called it a tip, and it was done.
Sure they're not in California?
I want to tell you, come to Indiana sometime. Come to Indiana sometime. And so what the Supreme Court said, this is how ridiculous this court is, okay? There's no dispute that the mayor awarded a contract to this particular company, multi-million-dollar contract, and then after the contract was awarded, this particular mayor, his name was Snyder, then he approached that company and he said, hey, I need some money, okay? And the company, I can't remember how much, it was a significant amount of money. They gave him the money, and then he was prosecuted and he was convicted, and it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, well, you know what? If he would have asked for the money before he awarded the contract, that would be illegal. But since he was given the money after he was awarded the contract, that's a tip, a gratuity. That's what the Supreme Court used those words. That's how ridiculous the Supreme Court is and how far they go to help along these corrupt public officials. And it's just a crime. And I got to tell you, I published that op-ed on Twitter, and this Elon Musk, supposedly the richest person on the planet who runs Twitter, he penalized me for it. 10 minutes after I published, and it was published by the Kansas City Star and the Miami Herald and several others, then he penalized me and put some kind of label on my account where my account then can't reach the readers that it's, the number of readers, that would want to see it. And who's this guy? This guy's got this, Twitter's supposed to be a public account, First Amendment, people have, want to make their comments and expressions. And we got people like that now controlling things in this. He's controlling free speech in this country.
All the tech companies are. I mean, it's like everywhere. And half of them, I don't know about Elon Musk, but at least half of them, the government's controlling them. And it's like free speech it's gone. I mean, it's like our rights in a lot of ways. Okay, my conclusion, I called the FBI and said, what happened to my constitutional rights? Oh, they're still there. The question is, do you have the power to force anybody to obey them? Because we're not going to send the police over there to do it for you. We're not going to have the courts automatically defer to backing it. They're still on the books, but what power is within your reach to make anybody give a dang about any of it? And that's the way almost all law is at this hour, unfortunately.
Well, that's why
Definitely.
people need to step up to the plate, statewide, in all of the states, and nationally, and start when elections come around and these politicians, oh, vote for me, I'm going to do all these great, we need to start pressing these politicians. Hey, one question for you: are you willing to step up to the plate in your capacity as a representative, state representative or federal representative, and start putting pressure on for serious judicial reforms that are necessary? Are you willing to do that? Yes or no? And
They
are
need
you
to sign
willing?
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you will be removed from office if you don't keep your promise, because otherwise they'll tell you anything all day long, but they don't do it.
Exactly. 100%. You're right, Jeff.
Yep. It's for me, I think our political soup right now is so crazy in so many different ways. I can't even go there. But one thing that stirs me and is my rudder in life is the truth. If they're not saying the truth, if you see anybody on TV, any politician, there's a guy in Nashville a while back where they were doing the House Senate stuff where they were gaveling the votes before they even called the nays. So the House leader was gaveling it and calling it before they even heard the votes. And then they captured it on TV. And then the guy is walking next to him with the TV station asking him, how did you gavel that before you even heard the other votes? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I never did that. If somebody is going to lie to you, I don't care what party they're in. If they are point blank dead to rights, they are lying. I don't care what party they're in. You cannot trust them. We cannot think they're on our side. That we cannot think whether they're red or blue. That at the end of the day, they care about anything more than green. We have got to start tagging these people, make a note of their name, get them the hell out of office, and get people that have integrity in there that actually do what they say, that actually, even if they can't do what they say, they don't talk out of both sides of their mouth at the same time. That at least the truth courts are supposed to be law applied to truth. We boil down truth, then we apply the law. The truth is the one thing, in my experience so far, nobody cares at all about. And that has been one of my greatest offenses. It's not what you've done to me. It's that you are force feeding me the fact that in our current political climate or our judicial climate, the truth is absolutely irrelevant to the administration of justice. And I will not settle for that. That is offensive to me on every level.
Oh, definitely. The truth reigns. I mean, God is watching.
Yeah.
And Jeff, I'm so glad I had you on. How can people reach you if they have any questions?
Yeah, great. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you both. I can Tennessee TN Injustice, Tennessee Injustice, TNINJUSTICE.org. I've just started setting up, I have that video that's on there if somebody wants to see it without watching it through the cell phone. And I've started to put some links there. No, I appreciate you putting it on. But I'm starting to put some links there. I've invested most of my energy so far in fighting in court, but I've made a lot of documents discoverable, but I haven't really built a website to help the public yet. But that's one thing that I'm going to work towards. I have to still just keep up with the court dates before they dribble me out of there, which I already know they plan to do. So it's, but Tennessee Injustice, and it's .org. So TNINJUSTICE.org.
Okay, so is there an email also? Or
yeah, I'm sorry. Jeff at TennesseeInjustice.org. So just JEFF at TNINJUSTICE.org. And I'm on Twitter at Tennessee Injustice.
Okay, and I have Brian Vukadinovich for Motion for Justice at yahoo.com. And you can find Brian Vukadinovich on Twitter, Motion for Justice. Brian has also been on the podcast, season 4, episodes 69, 99, and 119, season 5, episodes 13, 37, 44, 74, and season 5, episode 97. So I hope his opposing attorneys got all that down. Okay. So
and buy coffee.
100%. Let me just say one thing here. Everybody who's watching this, tell all your friends, get this link out to people and support Maryann's podcast here.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's one of the very rare people in the country that is actually willing to do this, to talk about public corruption and court corruption issues in the country. The mainstream media, very little does that happen. They just, for some reason, they don't want to do it because of the powers that be get involved with things. And Maryann, she doesn't run and hide. She puts it out there on the forefront.
Amen.
So all the people who are watching this, support Maryann's podcast, Slam the Gavel. As a country, we need this podcast and we need Maryann.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your kind words. I love that. Thank you. Everybody, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast, help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe to my channel, Slam the Gavel. You can find me on Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't even know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee, which you can find in the podcast notes to help keep this podcast going. And I totally thank you, Brian Vukadinovich and Jeff Fenton, who are fighting the good fight. I honor you and thank you for speaking out.
Thank you for having us.
Definitely.